you're response able, like you're able to control your responses to situations, to people, and to sort of not be reactive. And it's more about making sure that we go out there and, we control how we control that situation. We don't react to that situation. And I think that can be used in our health and our wellness and the way we manage our business and the way we manage our life.
Welcome to the Get Invested podcast, where we share great conversations with experts from all walks of life to uncover their secret know-how on where they invest their time, their skills and their money, and the benefits that this has created. You see, the truth is that everyone invests. Every minute of every day, we're investing our time, our skills, our energy and our money in something. Some of us are investing consciously, some unconsciously, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, and sometimes for no impact. Get Invested will help you to start living by design, not by default. I'm going to help you to make it happen, not let it happen. You'll hear the top tips on how you can live with conscious intent so that you can live more, work less, and leave a living legacy by investing now. Listen to the show to discover the top tips on how to get started, make the most of your investment journey, and ultimately to be living your dream, not someone else's. More episodes can be found on iTunes or at bushymartin.com.au/get invested. Thanks for listening, and now let's get invested. Hi Freedom Fighters. Do you suffer from fatigue, anxiety or the occasional brain fog? Do you experience bloating, weight gain, some mood swings, skin disorders, perhaps even breathing difficulties or maybe even fertility problems? And if you do, have you really gotten to the reason why? You may have taken the drug, the potion or the lotion, or tried the latest diet, but are you treating the symptoms or getting to the real cause? Well, it's no surprise that we are what we eat, or more precisely, we are what we feed ourselves. I'm talking here about what we feed our minds as well as our bodies. So what does your diet look like? And I mean both neurologically as well as nutritionally. Neurologically, it's about feeding your mind. What do you listen to, watch, read, and most importantly, what do you say to yourself? That silent inner voice. Are you filling your head with fear by tuning into the daily news, or constantly distracting and numbing yourself with meaningless social media posts? And nutritionally, do you eat on the run, grabbing the fast thing instead of the good thing? Do you favour flavour over fresh? And overarching all of this, what are you saying no to? And why is any of this important anyway, and what's it got to do with investing? The simple answer? Everything. My lifelong study of sustainable success repeatedly demonstrates that success lies at the intersection of self, health, and wealth. And like a house of cards, ignore one of these three cornerstones of the pyramid, and whatever you're building will collapse. Now, in our fast-moving world, most of us tend to focus on external wealth without considering the foundational importance of self, getting our headsets and our mindsets right, and health, nourishing our bodies through food and exercise. And the answers to all three of these lie in giving yourself lots and lots of TLC. And that's tender loving care, as well as using time, leverage, and the magic of compounding returns. And sustainable success is built on our happy habits and our daily disciplines. All of those little things that are easy to do, but also easy not to do. The things that make no immediate impact or difference, but over time, they almost invisibly accumulate one way or the other to have a massive impact. So today we're going to talk about getting invested in yourself and your health. And not surprisingly, our mental and physical health revolves very strongly around what, when, and how we eat. So, are you really healthy? No, I don't mean fit, I mean healthy. Do you eat healthy? What does that even mean, and what difference does it make? Well, as someone who's personally suffered from Hashimoto's disease or a sluggish thyroid function for well over 20 years now. I've only got to look at food and I stack on weight. But I love my food. For me, it's a reward and an escape from the hustle and the bustle of life. And it means that I have to work really hard to stay healthy and fit. And for years I believed I just needed to work out harder in the gym until I woke up to the fact that your results are only 20% exercise and 80% what and how you eat. So how do you eat right? What do you and don't you eat, and when? What's right for me to eat, because aren't we all different? Well, we all know that we should eat less and we should eat better. But why don't we do it? And if we do, why don't we stick to it? And if we want to do something about it, what's the best way to go? Because it seems that every week there's some new food fad. One week fat is in and the next it's out. There's keto, paleo, pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, low carb, high carb, low fat, raw. And then there's detoxes, juicing, fasting, cleansers. You name it. What the hell? It's just absolutely totally confusing. And when we're confused, we just do nothing and keep doing what we've always done. So how do you work out what's right for you? Well, today's guest is going to cut through the confusion and finally give you some clarity. Nicole Moore is the founder and managing director of the national nutrition and dietitian company, Menuconcepts, that offers you over 15 accredited dietitians across the country. She's developed a low GI lifestyle weight loss program designed for people who have spent years following diets and trying to lose weight and get healthy without success. Her team helps anyone to lose weight, or for people who may be suffering from diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, or suffer from metabolic syndrome, which covers a whole host of symptoms that include things like weight loss, headaches, itchy skin, dizziness, tiredness, bloating, sugar cravings, irritability, difficulty sleeping, night hunger, you name it. And her team runs a very successful group lifestyle management program regarding eating healthy, health, and weight management. And it's fair to say that since adopting the main elements of her approach at the beginning of the year, I've managed to lose just under 10 kilos, and I'm feeling much sharper mentally and much more energised. Now, once you've got excited about eating healthy after listening to our great chat today, you may be interested to know that she has still got a very limited number of places left for her next exclusive one-day workshop at Serafino Winery in McLaren Vale on Saturday the 3rd of August. So if you are interested, jump in quick on www.menuconcepts.com.au/more, that's MORE, /MC-shop to grab your spot to start your journey to eating healthy. Now, during our great chat today, we also cover all of your big questions. How do I say no to the wrong foods? How do I avoid temptation when I'm out and about? How do I break my bad eating habits when I don't have the time to think about it? And how do I get started and, as importantly, keep eating right? Now, I've learned the hard way over the years that if you eat right, it's going to transform your life. If you start by looking after yourself, this leads to health, which allows you to create wealth. So get back on track and eat yourself to success by enjoying this great conversation with Nicole Moore. Hi, Freedom Fighters. Now, for all of you that have been listening to me for some time now, you know that I talk a lot about sustainable success. And to me, I believe this is built on getting invested in three key things. That's yourself, your health, and your wealth. And today we're going to be diving in deep into your health. Because, let's face it, we are what we eat. And I've got to say, it's never been more confusing with every fad known to man that's currently floating around. And it seems just about every week we've got a new eating program that might be vegan or paleo or low carb, high carb, raw, vegetarian, pescatarian. It goes on. And it's fair to say that myself and a lot of people are pretty confused. So I thought today we'd get someone on board who really is a specialist in this space, can give us some clarity on some really healthy eating as foundation stones for the quality of our life. So please welcome Nicole Moore. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Nicole, really looking forward to a great chat today. I think a lot of us have got a lot to learn, and a lot of us are very interested in this whole nutrition area, given the amount of confusion that there is in the space. But before we sort of dig into that, can you start by telling us a bit about who you are, what you do, and where you're heading currently?
Sure. Well, you kindly introduced me. My name is Nicole Moore and I'm an accredited dietitian. And I have been for about 20 years. And I am the founder of a company called Menuconcepts. So we have, I have 55 clinics across Australia. And we basically have, I guess, a face-to-face consulting service where we offer face-to-face nutritional counselling and health coaching and education to people to assist them with their weight management and to assist them with their chronic disease management and reversal. So I have a team of dietitians that practice across Australia for me within these sites, and a big part of what I do is help teach, train and coach them to enable them to really assist people who come through our doors and help them with their health related diseases. So that's a little bit, I guess, about what I'm doing at the moment. And does that kind of answer your question?
It sure does. It sure does. And I guess the underlying thing underpinning all of that, Nicole, is the why. Why do you do what you do?
Look, that's a good question, and I guess that if we go back to the uni days, to be quite honest, is when I was studying at good old Flinders University, I was studying to be a scientist, and I do recall, a lecturer at the time turn around and go, well, you guys are going to be scientists soon, and I sort of thought, wow, that doesn't really sound like my cup of tea. Which is when I then started literally chatting to people going, oh, gosh, what is it that I want to do? And I had literally a few conversations with people going, well, I'm going to be a dietitian. And I was like, well, what is that? What does that dietitian do? And I just heard the words nutrition, health, and chatting to people. And that literally was my turning point, I guess, initially to say, hey, look, that sounds like something I'd really love doing. Also from my end, as I had experienced through my life difficulties with my gut, with cravings and constant hunger, with weight issues. And so I thought, this was definitely the right avenue for me to really learn about how I could nutritionally help myself and help other people. And it involved food, which I love, and people to chat to. So really that's why I started. Doing what I'm doing now.
Okay, well, you've opened up a couple of things I'm keen to drill into a bit more there straight away, and you sort of mentioned that you had some health issues, gut issues yourself. Can we go back to that and that time and talk to us through what were the issues you were facing and what were your approaches to overcome them at that point in time?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing I think is why I sort of initially studied dietetics was because I wasn't overcoming them. I think a big thing for me was, my difficulty with my weight and achieving, little bits of weight loss, and constantly had an agitated gut. It was always bloated, and I was constantly, I guess, what people would be very familiar with, which was dieting, going on yo-yo diets, trying to pump more fibre into to make it feel worse. I had calorie and restricted what I'd eaten to try and achieve weight loss, and really never was able to. So I guess, that sort of made me more determined to go down the dietetic path. And even when I went down that path, again, the interesting thing was I was trained in the same manner, cut fat out, restrict your calories, people will lose weight. If you've got an energy deficit, the more fibre, the more better your bowels will be. And it really was from, me still struggling even as a dietitian student, thinking, why am I the dietitian still walking around with weight issues and gut issues, and other dietitians seem to be finding this really easy and implementing the same nutrition messages and getting the results and keeping lean and having no gut issues. So that led me to going, there's got to be another way to manage health. And I think that's where I was driven from, a very early stage in my career to look at alternative pathways and, to managing health that weren't maybe the dietary guidelines. And you say what was the turning point, and I think what was really interesting is, we were always taught in the beginning as dietitians, Atkins was the worst diet out there and you shouldn't eat fat, it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I felt so sick that I thought, well, I'm following fibre and I'm following low-fat guidelines. It's not working for me. So one literally week I decided I'm just going to eat fat. So for a whole week I ate fat and it was the best I ever felt. And that was really my turning point to say, well, I think there's definitely some science in, having more fat and protein in the diet. And that really led me on my journey to where I am now and how I manage my health and how my dietitians practice, which is not necessarily based on traditional guidelines that we're taught.
Yeah, well, I'd love to drill into some of that because, you're right. There was, for a long time, we were all told that, fat's the evil and we overcarbed and everything else. And there was the low-fat this and the low-fat that, which is, it appears in some cases has probably created more problems than that it's solved along that journey.
Yeah, correct.
For those that are listening that probably haven't delved into this anywhere near the level that you have, are you able to talk through some of your conclusions from that in relation to, okay, well, these are the issues that I found, both through my own personal experience, but through the readings and the research I've done, and it's led me to a point now where this is what I suggest and this is the sorts of things that people have to start thinking about.
Yeah, well, a lot of the new science now shows that a lot of chronic disease, whether it's obesity or gut problems, blood pressure, lipid issues, arthritis, Hashimoto's, lots of different medical issues stem from inflammatory problems. And insulin resistance is really the key hormone creating these inflammatory problems. So a lot of studies are showing, that elevated levels of insulin that are not working effectively in people's bodies is creating a lot of these problems. And we all produce insulin, but what's happening over time, particularly since, I guess, when, the dietary guidelines kind of got introduced and people started sort of dropping back their fat and increasing their grains and breads and cereals intake, is that's when we started seeing the increase in obesity and chronic disease. And, what seems to have happened is that people have consumed a lot more low-fat products with a lot more sugar. They're driving their diet through a more grain-driven diet with breads and cereals and potatoes more because they're trying to avoid fat. And what this has kind of created is sort of insulin resistance, where people are producing a lot more of this hormone to try and regulate this intake of carbohydrate or sugar. And when we consume carbohydrate and sugar, it basically all breaks down to glucose predominantly in our body. And that glucose or that sugar is requiring insulin, but because we're pumping so much in, people's insulin's getting tired and it's not working as well. And so we get this kind of insulin resistance type state, or as I say to my clients, you're getting these little insulin tsunamis that are kind of flowing through your body. And insulin is a lipogenic hormone. That means it stores fat, it sucks it in. So you've got all these people trying to improve their health and their weight through low-fat diets, but because they're pumping in so much fuel from carbohydrates and they've got this sort of insulin resistance going on, is that they can't lose weight. And then blood pressure and inflammatory problems and arthritis and cholesterol, are all kind of stemming from this inflammatory problem. So, this is where by lowering the level of carbohydrate you consume and consuming more, energy from good protein and healthy fat and vegetables, which create less glucose in the blood, you're able to actually lower the amount of natural insulin production in your body. And once you can do that by feeding on more proteins, like, meat and chicken and fish and eggs and healthy fats like avocado and olive oil and green leafy veggies, the insulin production in the body drops down and the insulin sensitivity improves.
Right.
Then there's kind of a snowball effect. The body's able to let go of fat. Insulin impacts hunger, so the body feels less hungry. So suddenly people feel less hungry, and they're dropping weight because they're not producing so much of this inflammatory hormone. And so people achieve improvements in their health and their blood sugars and their weight by simply changing the type of calories they're eating. So that message becomes not about calories total as it does the type of calories. So, this is what I found by just experimenting on myself, but the more I researched in and read about, insulin resistance and what impacts insulin resistance, the more I was able to, I guess, look into how low-carb, healthy fat eating benefits people a whole lot more, and it's just an easier way of managing hunger and weight. So it's a very interesting new science, I guess, and it's really the most powerful tool I've seen to help people manage their health better.
Yeah, so is it a one-size-fits-all exercise, Nicole, or is it, given everyone's metabolism is a bit different and their makeup is a little bit different, how does that influence the approach that they take to this sort of low-carb, healthy fat regimen that you're indicating?
Yeah, so I think you just mentioned sort of body type, is that right?
Yeah.
Rishi? Like people with different body types. So yeah, you're right. I mean, you'll find, I guess I call it metabolically flexible people. And they're really people that are not going to be affected by disease. They tend to be those people who are sort of able, luckily to eat what they want and do a little bit of exercise and really maintain their weight without difficulty. And generally they're metabolically flexible and they're probably not genetically wired to be insulin resistant. So those type of people will always, be able to manage, a higher carbohydrate load. I still always, the message would have to be, definitely still sugar is something that we want to avoid, and we don't want to consume foods with a lot of added sugar because there's not really a lot of nutritional attachment to that. It's sort of empty calories. Yep. But then there's a lot of people who have the other body type. They're the people that have struggled their whole lives, have got pre-diabetes or have type 2 diabetes, have a lot of other comorbidities like a high waist hip. They have a lot of gut issues. They might have blood pressure or cholesterol. So these body types are not metabolically flexible, and they have some form of, insulin resistance going on, sort of, creating momentum with all these health problems. And then the more they try to manage it with, a high carbohydrate diet with added sugars, because they're having a cold pressed organic juice, which is still loaded with sugar, even though it's sort of, seems like a healthy option. When they're feeding their bodies a lot of concentrated sugars and carbohydrates, which, let's face it, these days foods are far more processed than they used to be. Yeah. It's driving this body type into worse health. And so I think that's how I see, different body types. And definitely there's people who are going to manage this, manage a traditional diet far better. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily still healthy on the inside if they're eating a lot of, processed oils or inflammatory oils and sugar. So, I think that sort of is where I see different body types and how low carb will benefit people who are more genetically wired to be insulin resistant through either their family or just through the years of just pumping too much sugar and carbs into their body.
Yeah, okay. So when someone comes to see you or your team across the country, Nicole, to help them understand where they're at and what they need to do, where do they start?
Yeah, look, I think, many people come in and they've kind of had enough. They've been on and off diets for a long time. So they almost see us in desperation, like they don't know what to do. And they've done, the calorie counting, and they've done, different sort of group programs, and they've done the shake diet. So often they'll come in and they're not getting anywhere. So they sit here kind of bewildered saying, look, I don't really know what to do next. And I guess what I do is I explain to them, well, look, a lot of people who have struggled for a long time and have a lot of health issues usually have some form of insulin resistance. And I'll kind of go through a checklist and I'll say, look, have you struggled what feels like a large part of your life with your weight? And they'll often say yes. Or I'll say, do you suffer from bloating, constipation, diarrhea? Do you get reflux? Do you feel tired? Do you get bad cravings or hunger? Do you carry a lot of weight around your midsection? So often people start to go, well, yeah, that sounds like me. I have reflux and I'm always got constipation and my blood pressure or my waist tip is high. So, when I start to sort of connect with them with sort of more physical attributes they're suffering from, which can be a sign, I guess, of their bodies being inflamed, they start to feel engaged, go, okay, well, what can we do about it? And then that's when I sort of say, well, look, traditional methods where, don't necessarily work. And they'll say, well, yeah, I feel like I've tried everything. And then I say, well, look, let's talk about insulin resistance more and let's talk about the foods that make it worse. And, mostly their diets are driven by carbohydrates because that's what they've been taught. They've probably got a lot of hidden sugar that they weren't aware of, that sauce they were adding has, 3 teaspoons of sugar in it, or the juice that they're having's loaded with sugar still, or, that the whole grain bread that they're eating is still releasing sugar in their blood. So once they start to sort of see that their traditional way of eating may be a part of the problem, that they start to be very intrigued with the solution of trying something new. When I say new, CSIRO brought out their, lower carb style recipe books, over 12 months ago, and there's a lot of research out there, particularly if you go through websites like Low Carb Down Under that have loads of science. So people get really engaged and excited about trying a different avenue because what they're doing isn't working. If it was working, they wouldn't have gut issues, weight issues, blood sugar issues. And then people come back in 2 weeks and the changes they experience are not just about weight. It's about how they feel in themselves, their wellness, their energy, their control over their body, their reductions in blood glucose if they've got diabetes is mind-blowing. And then they're hooked. But that initial conversation really is quite easy because they connect with all the symptoms and they want a solution that's different because they've tried everything else. So, that's what I take people through at that first appointment.
Yeah, okay. So just to put some clarity around where the sort of low-carb, healthy fat thing sits alongside, at the moment all the rage is the keto or ketosis exercise. Are we talking the same thing or are they different?
Look, they are different. I mean, they're in a similar pathway, a similar process of reducing carbohydrates, but when you're talking about ketosis, you are talking about getting total carbohydrate intake as low as 20 grams a day, which, to give you an example, a medium carrot has 5 grams of carbohydrate.
Wow.
A handful of mushrooms has, 5.6. So when you go ketotic, it's a real significant change because you really have to be tracking. And we'll do ketosis or ketotic diets, for conditions, for example, like epilepsy, which gets amazing results with a ketotic diet. But that's where you really have to start focusing on even restricting things like, nuts and dairy and watching how many vegetables you eat. Whereas when you look at low carb, there are varying degrees of how low you go. And that's very individual. So we'll often sort of teach people about trying to aim between a low level to begin with to get the best benefits of maybe, 25 up to sort of 55.
Yeah.
And seeing how they feel and what their body does. And then from there, we can add more back in. So low carb is really about dropping the obvious carbohydrates, which are things like breads and cereals and pasta and rice and crackers and even fruit and potatoes and sort of those starchy kind of products.
Yeah.
And just consuming more incidental carbohydrates from not so obvious sources. So ketogenic's a lot more strict and really isn't necessary unless someone's, really metabolically inflamed and, they're seriously in ill health and really need to get some results quickly. Then we may put people on a more ketotic-based diet. Mm-hmm. But otherwise they don't need to. They just need to get a good reduction to create some benefits in their health.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of, let's take someone like myself. So I front up to you, Nicole, and I'm one of those typical people who were eating, and I've changed recently, but I was eating 3 meals a day, and it starts with eggs and bacon on toast for breakfast, and then I, depending on what I'm doing, I might make an omelette for lunch, or if I'm really busy, I'll race down to the bakery and grab a coffee and a pie on the go, and then evening comes around and we'll either cook a steak with some salad or some veggies. That's pretty much what would the regimen would look like. What would you be saying to me? You'd be saying, okay, well, we're going to cut this out. What would your initial approach be?
Well, look, I think what's really important, which is one thing that's key in management of health, is that you have to make the changes really easy. So, if you were saying to me, I've got my, eggs and I've got my toast in the morning, I'd be saying, well, look, keep the eggs, swap the toast for some healthy fat like some avocado and leave the bread out. Then I might also offer you some solutions that can be bread swaps that make life even easier. So if you can make a change that feels like it's not a huge wall to climb, you're going to make it. And I think that's what's really something I really push with all of my dietitians and myself, is that, it's not one size fits all, but you've also got to make sure that any changes you suggest are sustainable and enjoyable. So my simple would be, swap the, toast out, bring some avocado in, or here's some bread options that are low carb, add some green leafy spinach into that to add some fibre, and we're happy. Lunch, if we have to, pop out somewhere, then there's always options. And, I always say, worst case scenario, if you're trapped in a bakery, when in doubt, eat from the inside out. So, you might end up eating the middle of your, pie or pasty for that moment, which, are not all that pastry, but there are a lot of low carb healthy options out there, whether it be a Subway salad or some sashimi or a noodle box without the noodles but extra broccoli. And dinner needs to be the same. It just may be driven more around some healthy protein from the butcher with greens versus pasta or rice-driven meals. But then again, there's substitutes out there. So, most people will walk out going, okay, I don't feel like I have to make huge, massive changes. I mean, our job is to make this easy and to teach people you can still eat out. The key message always is to make sure that the changes we offer people are easy. If we can make changes to their diet that reduce carbohydrates and sugars but are livable, then that's going to be something that they'll take away with and feel happy that they can cope with it. So, with that breakfast, the only thing I'd be going is, well, look, let's drop the bread and let's replace it with a healthy fat. So let's put in some avocado and maybe we'll add some greens to that. So it might be some spinach and it might be some avocado with the eggs versus the bread. But then I would give bread options that I know are out on the market that are actually made from nuts and seeds, so healthy fats versus flour, which is carb-driven. Then, with lunches, again, I guess I always say, it's like eating the middle of your sandwich. You eat the protein, you eat the greens, you add some healthy fats like some avocado, nuts and olive oil, just leave the bread out. Yeah. But again, there are some bread swaps. If someone says, well, look, what if I find myself needing to buy some lunch? Again, I'll go through lots of options, whether it be a salad you can get from the local deli or a Subway salad or a sashimi plate. Maybe it's the wok on the box noodle stir fry, but you say hold the noodles, add extra broccoli, which you can do. There are lots of options out there. I always make a bit of a joke that, if you find yourself ever trapped in a bakery, that, you eat from the inside out. When in doubt, eat from the inside out. So you may not be nutritionally balanced, but at least you haven't walked away and eaten a whole stack of awful pastry with inflammatory oils that's going to inflame your body and release a load of glucose into your blood. So, you know, a lot of my low carbers, you'll see empty sausage rolls with the middle eaten. Not a great balance, but if you're desperate, well, there's always a way around it. Dinner, again, the same thing. It really should be similar. I think, you know, a lot of my clients say exactly the same thing. Look, I'm eating the same food as everyone else, but, you know, instead of having that regular rice, I'm having cauliflower rice. Or instead of having the regular pasta, I'm having some zucchini noodles or some cognac noodles. So they don't feel like they have to live their life differently, and they can cook the same for the family. If you don't make it sustainable and easy, you know, people won't do it. So that's our job as low-carb dietitians particularly, is to create a life that makes them feel well, makes them feel in control of their health with really simple changes. We're not telling people to go out and bake their own low-carb bread and make their own cereals, because most of us ain't going to do it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But we make it easy, and I think that's, you know, how we stand above maybe other, you know, nutritionists out there that are practicing old methods and making people cut all the fat out and cook from scratch and not use sauces. We have to be realistic. We have to make it a lifestyle. We have to make it easy, but we have to make it no sugar and reduced carb to get really amazing health benefits for people.
I love that approach, because I know myself, Nicole, food is a reward for me. So,
yeah, sure.
You know, I'm stressed. I'm running around. It's like, I'll just go and eat something as a reward. So, with what you've suggested there's some really good alternatives. So you still feel like you're rewarding yourself. You're not depriving yourself or starving yourself or counting the calories. And as you've said, it just doesn't last a distance. And when we get stressed and we're in those, you know, really busy moments, that's when the temptation creeps in, just to take the easy route and fall back into the old bad habits. And as soon as you fall off the horse, a lot of people never get back on top of the horse.
Yeah.
So, where does good old caffeine fit into the equation here? Because that's I've got to say, Nicole, coffee is probably one of my biggest vices. I can give most things away, but I really struggle to give away coffee. Where do you see coffee itself fitting in the mix?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's any issues with coffee. I mean, I've talked about coffee having... I think it's what we put in our coffee that's the big problem. You know, people are having large, massive, ginormous lattes, and what you don't realise is in a cup of milk there's up to 14 grams of carbohydrate, which breaks down to sugar in your blood. You know, or they're adding sugar as well to that, or they're buying, you know, instant flavoured coffees and then topping milk. So we put in. So as long as people are drinking plenty of water, but that they try alternative options, maybe just have the one latte a day, or if they want to be super low on their carbs, you know, try some other alternatives like macadamia milk or almond milk, or you know, I talk a bit to people about A2 milk, which is a different type of protein, which for some people they digest it better, and there's some other research behind its benefits with assisting with gut health. So, yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with coffee. It's more if it's got, you know, 3 happening a day that are full cups of milk and then they're adding sugar. That really is the problem with coffee.
I'm on a coconut milk exercise. I've been drinking now for some months because of I've come to realise that anything dairy is very inflammatory to my system.
Yeah.
So
and look...
does coconut milk fit into the right category as far as that goes?
Yeah, coconut milk does. I think it's just like with any of those nut milks, is making sure they're unsweetened, because you can, you know, get a great coconut milk and it's got added sugar, and you go into a cafe and, you know, I've gone in and gone, I'll have an almond milk latte, and I walk out thinking, wow, that's really sweet. And, you know, an aha moment that they've got almond milk, not like the almond milk I've got, it's got added sugar. So, but yeah, coconut milk, almond milk, macadamia milk, you know, soy milk is something that I guess has more carb drive to it because it's a bean, and a lot of people, you know, don't like. There's a whole, and I won't get into it today, but, you know, another whole question mark over to soy and whether there's issues with cancer. And, you know, I prefer the nut milks because of they're a lower carb base, and, you know, and you're not getting all that extra sugar in there. So
yeah. Okay, all right. So really interesting. One of the other things I'm hearing a lot about, and something that I've tried recently, which has produced some really good results. Actually, I've dropped about just under 10 kilos in the last 3 months, and I think a lot of that is one, I have eliminated carbs pretty much across the board, but I've also only eating twice a day, and I'm almost, I guess you call it intermittent fasting is the trendy term for it, but I'm not eating until lunchtime. So I'll have a meal at lunchtime and a meal for dinner. And surprisingly, I haven't missed it. I was one of those that, breakfast is the best meal of the day and you can't live without breakfast. And I'd convinced myself of that for donkey's years. But making that change to having bigger periods not eating, it appears to have made a massive difference. What's your view around all of that?
Yeah, look, I absolutely. Intermittent fasting is something that we definitely include as part of our health management. And there's a variety of reasons why fasting. I mean, if you think back to the cave days where we were, living in the cave and, if there was food, we'd grab it. And if there wasn't food, we wouldn't eat. So we've really been genetically kind of designed to intermittent fast and feed in small windows. There's a lot of benefit because with fasting, you're not therefore feeding and producing an insulin surge. So it creates a better form of weight loss. There's a lot of science showing that it also helps improve our ghrelin and leptin, which are ghrelin is our hunger and leptin is our sort of satiety hormone. So when you fast and you're not feeding, you reset that balance, and so your appetite and satiety gets better and you feel more sustained for longer. And I don't know whether you've noticed it, Bushy, but when you do fast and then you feed, you feel quickly full. And you've noticed that. So there's that improvement in appetite control. There's an improvement in insulin, which helps with weight loss as well. And they've shown a lot of science behind, basically the cells reset and the old cells die and the new cells reset, which is a big important factor in overall health and preventing cancers. So, from a weight loss perspective, when you just give yourself a window of longer than normal, and 16 to 18 hours is a really good sort of window where you might fast from the evening and wait at least 16 hours overnight before you feed. So if you finish at 6 p.m., you might not start feeding till 10 a.m. or you might even be able to go longer. There's no insulin spike, so you're going to drop insulin and you're going to drop weight. You're also creating an energy deficit naturally, which doesn't seem to impact people because of their ghrelin and leptin improvements. They don't feel hungry anyway. And people always say, well, don't you have to eat regularly to keep your metabolic rate going? Well, if you're keeping your insulin down by following a low-carbohydrate diet generally anyway, when you're not feeding, if your body needs a bit of fuel, it's going to take it from your fat. And when your insulin is being managed well by a low-carb diet, your body can kind of turn the fat tap on and get some fat from a cell and use it as energy.
Okay.
But when you're actually on a carb-driven diet that's creating worse insulin locks fat. So if you don't feed for a while and your body says, well, I need some food, it can't get any fat because your insulin is still kind of inflamed and being produced. So it has to kind of slow down to respond to that. So traditionally, eating 3 meals is required if you eat a lot of carbohydrates because you will slow your body down. And you damage your metabolic rate. But if you're on low carb, you can go 16, 18, 20 hours. If your body needs fuel, take it from your fat. And so your metabolism is kind of being fed fat from the inside out. So it's got fuel and it's got the best type of fuel and it will keep burning. So a lot of research shows the metabolism doesn't slow, and in fact you become a little bit more metabolically flexible and burn more calories per minute on a sort of intermittent fasting based diet. It's a really great strategy that we use as part of our management for sure.
It certainly had amazing results for me, and like everything, it started very quickly and then it sort of plateaued and remaining a bit consistent, which is probably exactly the way it's meant to go. I'm guessing. But okay. Well, The other thing that I know that gets a lot of air these days is this talk around gut health. Now, the low-carb, healthy fat regimen that you're suggesting, how does that tie into the whole gut health exercise?
Well, I guess a big part of it is when you think of, glucose, it's inflammatory. So when people have inflamed guts, a big part of the problem can be because they have too much that can drive inflammation. There's also the side that what they've found is that if you do a low-carb diet and so your body uses more fat as an energy source, that fat production comes in the form of ketones. Right. And ketones are actually, when you look at fibre that we eat from our diet, like grain, breads and cereals, etc., the fibre produces these kind of short-chain fatty acids, which give us a lot of gut benefit, but they have to convert to ketones. I guess once they turn into short-chain fatty acids in our gut, they have to turn into ketones, which is the sort of therapeutic part for the gut, whereas when you do sort of low-carb healthy fat, you're getting a lot more ketones being produced often, and this has got an even better impact on your gut. So this is where we seem to find why people who go low-carb, where they take out a lot of breads and cereals, tend to say, my gut feels better. Because of it doesn't have that glucose inflammation, and it doesn't have it has more of those sort of therapeutic sort of ketones going through. So that's kind of one of the theories why gut health is improved. A whole lot of fibre that has to be digested with grains and breads and cereals, and so the gut has a bit of time to rest. So and gut health is super important. So low carb seems to help a lot of people. And there are other reasons behind it with FODMAPs and lectins, which are just other compounds that can cause havoc in the gut. And when you go on a low-carb diet, those sort of compounds are naturally reduced. So the body's able to digest food better. So we get a lot of people saying, my gut feels better, but it doesn't mean we don't recommend people use pre- and probiotic foods and use psyllium husks and maybe take a probiotic and eat lots of green leafy veggies and nuts and seeds to get the health benefits, still from fibres, but from more low-carb fibre sources. Right,
yeah, okay, that makes sense. So what I'm picking up there then is that it's the carbs creating the insulin reaction that is potentially affecting the weight gain, the diabetes, which has mood and fatigue issues. Am I right in saying then that flows on into the autoimmune responses, and that's why the thyroid issues are occurring? Is that all related to the same thing that we're talking about there, Nicole?
Yeah, look, I think you are correct. And the information, I guess, tends to indicate that, inflammatory diseases sort of stem from that insulin issue. And then I guess glucose and carbohydrates drive that. So, the principle behind it and the science that there indicates that potentially there may be some benefits in doing low carb with things like Hashimoto's, where you can try and reduce the amount of inflammation that's in the body. There's also some research behind lectins, and lectins are a protein found in a lot of carb-driven foods, and we, probably not enough time to go on today, but basically a lot of plant foods and animals that eat a lot of sort of grains and things like that can get lectin in their body, which can create a big havoc with the immune system. And a lot of plant-based foods, because plants protect themselves through many mechanisms, and one of those things is producing lectins. And lectin's a bit like gluten, and so it can create a gut leak and go into the blood and cause autoimmune issues because it kind of mimics cells. So when you do low carb, you tend to also naturally, without realising it and without us necessarily telling people, drop a lot of lectins in the diet, which includes the gluten from the whole grain breads and cereals, and even certain, rice and, sugar and things like that. So there's a big, research sort of going on about how reducing the total carbohydrate, which includes lectins, can definitely help with that. So I think it's, for anyone, if they're having troubles, it's worth trialling to see if their body would respond to that. There is research behind whether intermittent fasting works well or not, or whether it stresses the body too much with Hashimoto's, and that's something that, we have to leave and let the individual just see how their body responds. And if it responds well, then we keep it going. If it doesn't and it seems to stress the person and they really struggle with it, then we might, focus on low carb initially.
Well, it's certainly, as a sufferer of Hashimoto's myself, the intermittent fasting thing has actually worked pretty well. I haven't had any negative side effects from it. What about for those female listeners amongst the audience, Nicole? There's also been links around diet to infertility. What's your thoughts around that, and what you're suggesting might fit into all of that?
Well, look, I guess the knowledge I have is that, the higher the BMI, the more infertility kind of rises if people are, struggling with their weight. And again, they may have issues with their insulin driving that. So I think the fertility improvement potentially on low carb comes predominantly from managing the BMI through managing the insulin and getting the weight loss that way.
Yeah.
And I think, just, having an overall good diet with lots of green leafy veggies and, nuts and seeds and healthy fats, has been shown to improve, fertility in males as well. So I think from my knowledge that really the fertility probably side of it stems from improving BMI through improving insulin.
Yeah, okay. So that evil insulin exercise keeps creeping in here, is what I'm hearing. So it seems to be the root of a lot of evils by the looks of what you're saying. Excellent. Well, look, that's really given us some bad pun here, but food for thought, Nicole, around some pretty important issues and a lot of things that I think we just don't stop and prop and think about. A lot of us have just fallen prey to the I guess the standard Western diet that through the good old TV and everything else has just led us to gradually a very high carb diet without us even thinking about it. And I can certainly say with the awareness, which has been forced by the health issues I've got, between the Hashimoto's thyroid issue and some other autoimmune exercise, that's forced me to start looking at, okay, well, is what I'm eating having an impact? And it's fair to say that the journey that I'm continuing to go on, and I'm certainly not anywhere near perfect because I keep falling off the wagon, but it has made a significant improvement on a whole bunch of things, from mental fog to energy levels to you name it. It's really has had a massive impact. So if there are those amongst the listeners who want to know more and want to learn more, how do they reach out to you and your team to get started on that journey, Nicole?
Look, if people are interested in getting more assistance, probably the best avenue is to go through my website, www.menuconcepts.com.au. There's an email there. There's a contact number to talk directly to me, and my Facebook link is there if they just want to maybe, first of all, just start to be introduced to a little bit more about it. I'll always be posting up, interesting articles and research and products and difficulties people might have and how to overcome them to live a healthier life. So that's probably the best avenue if they go to my website and they can connect with me that way.
Brilliant. We'll put that in the show notes. Now, before we sort of bring it to close, I'm going to get you to do the machine gun dance with what I call the ambush question series, Nicole, where I asked 5 questions that the listeners are always asking for answers and direction on. So to kick that one off, what's your favourite quote and why?
Look, I think my favourite one and I use it, and whether it was a quote, I think by Winston Churchill, and I think his quote was really more like never, never, never give up. And I'm constantly saying it to myself and my clients that come to see us, is that, I say it slightly differently, that, you'll only ever fail if you give up. So, when it's me, when it's a business situation that I'm not maybe achieving what I want to achieve, I just don't give up and keep stepping forward. And particularly with clients who come in, I mean, I just say don't give up trying. I mean, if you don't, you'll only ever fail achieving your weight loss goals or reversing your diabetes if you give up. So just don't. Keep coming back. Let's keep talking. Let's keep implementing goals. So I think that's probably one of my constant quotes I say to people is just you'll only fail if you give up.
It's a good one. And the never, never, never give up is that the resilience, the patience and the persistence to just keep going because it's if you stick to something for long enough, then you're going to get the benefits from it. Yeah, love that. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. On the reading front then, what would be the top book that you'd recommend people read and why?
Look, I guess, I mean, I do a lot of reading, I guess, along the lines of sort of nutritional science and research. But I think one book that sort of stands out from I read a long time ago was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things that just really stood out for me is that, you're responsible, like you're able to control your responses to situations, to people, and to sort of not be reactive. And it's more about making sure that we go out there and, we control how we control that situation. We don't react to that situation. And I think that can be used in our health and our wellness and the way we manage our business and the way we manage our life. And that's just something that always sticks with me is that we can control our responses. We are in control of that. The diabetes isn't making us angry or the weight. Don't let the weight make you angry. Just take a step back. You're in control and move forward with some daily rituals that you can, implement to move forward. So, that book and that particular kind of part of the book really sort of always sits in my mind. Yeah. Because, even from a health perspective, people come in and they're so angry about their diagnosis or that they're not achieving their weight loss goals, that they're using all their energy and they're not controlling their response. And when I sort of turned around and said, look, you can control your response to this and let's look at some positive things you can do, you're able to not be angry and then focus on what you can do. So yeah, that's a really strong thing that I think has helped me in my life and in my business life and helped me help other people as well with the changes they need to make. Yeah,
I'd say you've taken a really good universal application of Stephen Covey's principles around that, which I think's really good actually. Now that's awesome. Now this one's a bit left field, but it is something that's on the top of everyone's lips because a lot of Aussies believe they pay too much tax. So what's the top thing that you've done legally to limit how much tax you pay, Nicole?
That's a good question. I probably haven't really. I probably actually need to. Is more the question. I don't think I've done that very well, if I have to be honest.
I can suggest a good accountant. I'll sort that out for you then. So that's easy. No worries. And that's a good honest answer.
Need that one.
I like that. Now, on the investment front, and I'm talking about where you're investing your time, your energy, your resources, not necessarily your money, but what do you consider to be both the worst and the best piece of investment advice that you've ever received?
Look, I think, just off the top of my head, because I think as a dietitian, investment, the word resonates differently with me. I would have said that, the information that I was given as a dietitian was probably the worst investment in my time in one respect, because I was trained in a way that was based on, I think, politics, not science. And, I live in a world that we have taught, this different, the wrong science of eating and calorie counting and low fat, and we've got a more unhealthy society than ever. However, had I not been trained to be a dietitian, I couldn't be a low-carb practicing dietitian now. So it's kind of the worst but the best. Yeah. I think the best investment in my time has been my investment in meeting like-minded health professionals and attending workshops and conferences on the new science behind low carb and where it's heading, and I think that's been a valuable investment in my time, because I think that's where we're moving towards. Is the future will be seen differently with the way we need to feed ourselves, and I've been meeting and connecting with a lot of people and reading a lot, and so I feel like I'm on top of that, whereas a lot of people are still not there yet, and that there are people out there wanting this new advice. So I think that that's probably my best investment advice was to someone say, you need to be looking into this more and more and more, and reading and researching, which is what I've done. So I'm hoping that answers your question.
It does. I think there's a swinging tide, Nicole, and an increasing awareness of all of the refined foods and the which are basically carb and sugar based, and the negative impacts it's having. I have noticed a bit of a shift. So I think what you're doing and the tremendous help that you're giving people in that regard is very, very timely. And
Bushy, I am very open to some good investment advice so that I can actually make some more passive income.
We'll talk about that separately. I'll shout you a copy at some stage and give you some thoughts around that. Now, you've sort of touched on this one. This is the last one of the Ambush series. But what's a personal habit that contributes to your version of your successful life so far?
So I think, when I look at success, lifestyle and business, I think from a lifestyle perspective, it's that I absolutely practice, what I preach. And, I can't be a motivator and a health coach if I don't, intermittent fast, eat and feed my body protein and healthy fats and greens, and try to install those principles with my children. We talk a lot about meditation, mindfulness because of stress management with health. So another thing I try to do, probably not as regularly as I should, but really try to bring that part in, because if I don't practice this, I can't preach it. I think that's really important. I can't tell someone else to do something that I don't do. I feel that people will know that if I'm not feeling energized and well off the way I feed my body. I think my daily or weekly or monthly rituals for my business is connecting with people and supporting, my dietitians and supporting my clients and going that extra mile so that everyone feels listened to and supported in as many ways as possible. So I think that's my success with my connection with my clients and patients and with my dietitians and with the GPs. Which has made the business a success as well. So they're sort of, I guess, two takes on lifestyle success and business success and how I see what I practice sort of being part of that.
Well, that walk the talk exercise, I often say to people, if someone's suggesting you do something they're not personally doing, run. Because you just can't take it seriously, and where's the demonstrated commitment from the person who's giving it that advice? Now, that's awesome. Been an awesome conversation. We're bringing it into a close and thinking about the future. If you're sitting down with your kids, and I'm not sure how old your kids are, but if let's say they're about to leave school, what would you advise them to invest their time and energy in to create their version of freedom and lifestyle success?
Well, I guess the number one thing I always say to them is that it's really important that they put all of their energy into the things they're passionate about, because if they're super passionate about something and they, go in that direction, then their work will come out of that, and then it will never feel like work because they're doing something they love. So, I always try to say to them, don't chase the dollar, because you'll end up being, maybe doing something that you don't love. If you focus on what you love, then the business will be created. So I think that's one thing and just to interact and get out there and interact with as many people as you can, because unless you meet people and learn from them, you can't thrive. So, that, and I always say lifestyle, look, guys, if you can create something, and my daughter's 13, my son's 11, if you can create something, that doesn't require you to go out to necessarily a bricks and mortar job all of the time, and you can have flexibility, what a great life to be in, that gives you great income that you love. But really that only comes from focusing on what you love and trying to make a job out of it in some way. So I constantly say that to my kids.
Well, I think you've hit on something that certainly resonates with my good wife Sonia and I, and that is, we live, eat, breathe, sleep, and enjoy life from the homestead here at Clarendon. We've sort of merged this whole concept of work-life balance doesn't exist because they all merge into each other, and we love what we're doing, and it is part of our lifestyle. It's not this separation thing. And I think the benefit of living in this time, and it's the most exciting time in the history of the world, if you ask me, the access to technology and how that can connect us and give us the ability to do anything from anywhere is just second to none. So it's a pretty exciting time for someone who embraces all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Look, it's been a really good chat. Thanks, Nicole. I really appreciate you dedicating some time. As I say, health is a absolutely foundation stone to achieving anything else, and health is very heavily reliant on what we put into our bodies. And I'm really pleased to see that there seems to be a growing awareness of thinking about the approach that you're helping people with through the low-carb and healthy fat regimen. So I know that's going to continue to do well, and look forward to talking to you again at some point in time to see how that's progressing.
Well, thank you very much for having me and listening to me. It's been great.
It's been awesome. Thanks for your time, Nicole. We'll talk soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Well, freedom fighters, how good was that? To get a summary of all this investment gold in the show notes, just email me on hello@khgroup.com.au. That's hello@khgroup.com.au. Or check us out at www.bushymartin.com.au/get-invested. I look forward to joining you next week for another episode of the Get Invested podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, dream as if you'll live forever and live as if you'll die